Hey, this is Dave Donnenfeld from Avalaunch, and today I have a couple guys from O Finance. We have Mason and Noah. You came in from Hermosa, and you took a plane here today. Welcome both. Thanks for coming down. I guess the first thing, I just want to pretend like this is an AMA, and maybe you can give me just a little bit about your background in crypto. Let's just start there, because that's always the fun place. When did you get in it?
Thanks for having us on, Dave. Yeah, so I flew in from Seattle. Got here last night and stayed near Monica.
Santa Monica?
Santa Monica Pier, yeah.
So you didn't sleep?
Just a few hours. I mean, these last few weeks have been quite exciting, you know. A lot of activity going on. So
let me interject for a second. With your background, I know a fun fact about you. Did you build your own miner?
Yeah, that's right. So I got back into crypto, out of just pure interest in early 2017, and you make one good trade. For me, it was Ant shares, and then you kind of just that kind of gets you in. So with some of that money, I built an Ethereum miner and ran that for a couple years, and eventually got into a more software development role with my career.
Is your background in software development?
Yeah, so I started doing web development in college, and then kind of moved through back end and into even some financial sectors before working at Amazon AWS for a year and a half in Seattle, where I learned really about how to scale software and how to make it work for large amounts of people. And so this is kind of where I see me fitting in crypto is like there's a big gap between where the software is right now and where good software should be. So this is kind of like what attracts me to the space and where I came from.
Got it. So Mason, you're the local guy. You slept a little bit.
Yep.
How did what's actually what is your background? Let's do the AMA thing. Let's start there.
So been about 10 years on the Microsoft side of the house. Recently flipped to go more into the crypto side. So that's kind of the tech background. A few of us that all work together. Rick, one of the other members of the team.
Rick.
And I and another couple of guys started building algorithm trading bots back in 2017. When that bull run was happening. So that was kind of dipping the toe in, and since then we've been progressively moving forward. As DeFi caught last year, that was a big pull as the bull run hit, and that's led us to come together with Noah and really move forward into going from being a user of DeFi into creators of DeFi.
Well, as algo guys, when did you first kind of say, hey, this DeFi is really a thing? There's going to be value locked here. It's not just going to be one exploit after another, although it has been the last couple months. When did you guys go, listen, this DeFi is like the real deal. This is financial services on the blockchain for everyone. Yeah. Was there a light bulb moment?
I know Rick's not here. We'll talk about him a little bit, but I think he kicked me in August and was like, dude, like, this is real.
August
2020.
DeFi summer.
Everything else before that had been swing trading, momentum trading, knowing that ETH was going to be this monster, but knowing that it still was on the roadmap. And I think that was, you start to see those TVL numbers pump on DeFi. And then really when somebody breaks it down and talks about like, okay, all we're really doing here is mimicking what New York does in the financial market, doing it in a 24/7 accessible to everybody style. When that light bulb clicks, you're like, oh, okay. Like I see where this is going, right? This is going to be big.
Got it. So you guys came together and you said, let's do a DeFi protocol. And what was the motivation? Like, what was like the thing, like what made you like have to build it? You know what I mean? Like what got you pumped?
Right. So, looking around kind of at current state of DeFi, you see a lot of segmentation. So lending and borrowing, they all happen on different markets. You have, for example, like Aave, Curve, Compound, all of these protocols, they are generally doing the same thing. You're lending your stable coins or your tokens to the protocol for them to, lend out or serve as some pooled liquidity. So when you look at this and you see, get into it, the volumes across these protocols are not consistent day to day.
Right.
So interest rates are constantly changing. And so when I look at something like this, I think that there is a real need for a like a structured index or some sort of aggregation of all the protocols that can be done in a gas efficient way. Just using each protocol individually is very inefficient for a single user.
Right.
But when you start to bring in large amounts of capital, it can be pulled together, or use a smart contract to batch your operations together, you start to see that there's a little bit more efficiency out there. The base amount of computation has to be done, but if we can limit it to one transaction per day versus 3 or 4 transactions per user per day, then you're saving thousands of dollars.
Well, you've seen it. I mean, you know, people chase yields, right?
Right.
You've been through that,
Yeah.
right? How often have you said, "Ooh, well, there's 10% over there, there's 20% over here, there's 40%." You're moving money around to chase a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always like the idea of an aggregator, but actually, since you guys seem to be the ones that are saying, listen, there's traditional finance, pooling capital is nothing new. Let's make this better and more accessible. So, just for the sake of simplicity, are you an aggregator, a compounder, a yield chaser, or everything sort of rolled into one, or a liquidity aggregator? Like, what's the core competence?
Yeah. Yield index was kind of the term. So if we want to get kind of into the technicals, the base protocol will batch 3 protocols: Curve, Aave, and Compound, and take user deposits and evenly balance them throughout the protocols.
So tell me about batching. How does that work?
Right. So batching, this is just, if we have $1,000 to start with, let's put 300, a third in Curve, a third in Compound, and a third in Aave. So the average user would need to do 3 transactions here, whereas using Finance, you can just do 1 and get exposure to all 3 of the protocols.
Okay. So just creating efficiency kind of.
Right. And so when you deposit into these protocols by yourself, you typically earn some sort of governance token or reward for using the protocol. So Compound will give you the Compound tokens, Curve gives you their Curve token, and Aave gives you their Aave token. And you can take these tokens, sell them for more of your underlying or your USDC, your deposit, and then compound on this interest. So we also do this, the protocol also automatically does this and changes your APR into an APY. So it's a continuous growth as opposed to a more segmented.
Right. So hold it. You're turning APRs into APYs.
Right.
I'm going to get like 7 questions down the list here. What about the token itself? You just told me what Curve Aave does. Like, what does the Finance token do? I know it's got governance and it's got some sort of earning power, does it not?
Right. So of the yield tokens, the governance tokens that get sold for profit, the protocol takes 20% of that and then will buy back the Finance token. So it then will burn these tokens to create a deflationary effect. So the idea is that the Finance token should be a reflection of the TVL and the total yield that the protocol is generating.
Okay, so it's a reflection of the total value locked and the yield that it's generating. And are you guys, and how do you plug into the big protocols? How does that work on a tech? You're working with Aave, Curve?
Yeah, a lot of it is just like Aave, Curve, Compound. They are permissionless protocols. We just write a smart contract, make sure the addresses are correct, and, just plug into their interfaces.
Now, Mason, you're in the real world sometimes, I've heard. How do you basically explain this to people, that might be, none of you guys have a friend that's a dentist who is interested in DeFi now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's got, right, somebody who sees the returns on Bitcoin and ETH and says, well, I want to dip my toe in. When should I buy ETH?
Right.
We don't want to be in that. Nobody wants to answer that question.
No,
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm not trying to time the market, tell somebody, and then they lose 10% and they're like, well, you're an idiot. Why did you tell me to buy?
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, part of the pitch that we use, look at savings accounts right now, right? Look at the big banks. They are crushing it on profit margin and applaud them for it, right? They figured out the system.
Yeah, because they're giving me 0.1% if I put my dollar in the bank.
Maybe 0.1.
Yeah.
Maybe 0.01.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, your credit card APR is like 26 or something like that.
Right.
Where's the difference going?
And for the people that, if you've got 10 grand, 100 grand, $1 million sitting in a your 401k or probably
Right.
more in something that's paying you, what, 6, 7%. 2020 was a nice little bump for everybody. But 2021 hasn't had that crazy 30, 40% growth on stocks. You want something a little bit lower risk, and you certainly want to get paid more than you do in a savings account. I think that's the pitch to the average person is, okay, BlockFi's come out, they've made a name for themselves. Same in that vein, Celsius, and there's a whole bunch of what we refer to as CFI, right? Centralized finance. 8% is great. 15, 20%, now you're starting to talk double growth. So if you can look at what you would normally put into a savings account, push that through to an O finance, now you're actually keeping up with inflation at least, and ideally making a bit more money.
But to most people not in crypto, he's speaking another language. So if you say to them, listen, I've saved some money, and especially on a global level, right? You want inclusion. There's no minimum to participate in no finance, right? Okay.
No.
And then if I actually want to on board and you say, listen, I have the proverbial 10K sitting there, I want to deploy, I'm interested in no finance. What kind of numbers have you been running? What kind of returns have you been able to show? And I guess you've been testing for a long time. I know that.
Yeah.
You contemplated deploying on Ethereum just to show a working product.
Right.
What's it been looking like so far?
Yeah. So Noah's been running a lot of results. I mean, we're seeing pretty consistent. And again, he talked about we've got fluctuating underlying. But the point of your question, I think, is if you've seen a curve, if you've seen a harvest before they did their refresh, this stuff is overwhelming. It's overwhelming for a little bit of a degen, even if you're picking between, one of 20, 30 selections. It's even harder when you go bring your, somebody who can't sit at a computer every day and check the price or get the alert and say, oh no, there was a flash crash.
Right.
Let me go dump money in. Nobody wants to worry about that if you've got a job where you're somewhere sitting 9 to 5, or even if you're just not into it, right? So we're seeing results in the 16 to 18%, not including any bonus tokens at all. And we think that's pretty compelling for a couple of reasons. One, we're only dealing with USDC, right? Coinbase has done a lot of work with regulators. I know Yellen's still attacking people to a certain extent, but USDC, in our opinion, is probably the safest game in town as far as stablecoins are right now.
Right. Because Tether's $70 billion, but it's still an unknown
30
quantity.
billion we're pretty sure is accounted for,
Okay.
but where's the gap?
It's a
there?
black box in between audits, whereas USDC, at least has some regulatory
Circles doing
compliance.
regulation,
Yes,
right? We
yeah.
saw that they're reacting. When they were getting, feedback for not being 100% in dollars, they're moving towards that way.
Right.
So as an investor for myself, right, USDC seems like the safe version of crypto right now.
And you're exclusively with that, but it's still everything you have. How scalable do you think it is?
As far as
Well,
amounts
just
going in.
yeah. Does you think that would have any impact in the long term?
Well-
If you guys locked up some inordinate amount of TVL, would
Right. I mean, this is when the protocol works the best, is when you're moving large sums, because the way that these DeFi protocols work is that it typically doesn't matter the dollar amount that you're putting into the protocol. It's more about the actual steps that need to be taken to get the tokens from point A to point B. So it costs the same to put in $100 as it would to put in $100,000. So the scale typically is, as far as the dollar amount in O Finance will scale up fairly well. It is this allows the protocol to compound more often, meaning the APY can go up, and also allows to generate more yield for the O Finance token itself.
Do you guys have any sort of compounding epochs? Like, how is that applied? Like knowing when to compound? This is just sort of the stuff that I think most people don't look at that matters.
Right. So the smart contracts themselves expose a function that anyone can call every 2 hours. And the 2 hour limit is able to be changed by governance. But the point of this is to prevent spamming by external users or bots. But the idea is that this function can be called at any time by anyone. So when whoever calls this function and does this reinvestment succeeds, they receive 2% of the profit. So there's a little bit of a kickback to the person who spends the gas to do these heavy operations, but it also, it translates to an APY for the people using the protocol, and then token buybacks for the actual token itself.
And what do you think of the gas fees on Ethereum? They've been cheap lately, huh?
Yeah. Well, we'll see as they kind of move towards, Ethereum 3 and the Beacon chain. Hopefully this will start to make things perform more like Avalanche and other proof of stake networks that have a little bit better UX right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, going to Avalanche is where you're ultimately building, right? This is the place for you.
Yeah.
You've got the instant finality, the fixed fees. Actually, they're becoming dynamic now, but what made you choose Avalanche? And then I want to roll it into two parts. Why Avalanche, one, and two, what do you think in this kind of plethora of DeFi protocols that are just constantly coming to market? I mean, we're being inundated. Is there any sort of differentiator? Are you doing it different or just better or both?
So let's start on the network side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Ethereum, right? And Ethereum is a monster.
Right.
There's also a lot of things out there. And what is everybody talking about? You just brought it up, but I'll just restate for simplicity, right? I mean, Ethereum's moving towards proof of stake. Avalanche is already there, right? Trying to kind of go to where the puck is already going to be, skating to where the puck's going to be, right? I think is what we've decided as a team here in the last couple of months as we've looked at the Ethereum fees and network congestion and everything else. And sure, there's layer 2 solutions, and I think we're all familiar with those. And everybody's been playing around with Matic. There's a lot of work being done on Phantom, but Avalanche really seems to have that strength of team as far as working with Luigi and the Avalabs group. I mean, those guys they're professional, right?
Yeah.
So when you start to deal with that kind of resource, you just understand who you're working with, you understand the backend that they're bringing, you understand the technical expertise, and then you look at that on behalf of your users. So
they have a level of compliance that I don't think any other layer 1 does.
Yeah.
That's been kind of a thing. And they came under scrutiny for that a bit.
Yeah.
Because it sort of slowed up their adoption. But I can say, behind the scenes, they do everything right. Now, that segues into what I was going to ask before we get to your differentiator. Is part of the plan of to really start to onboard people who aren't your typical DeFi users? Is that something you see? Like if you had to project a year or two out and say, what percentage of our TVL is going to come from people who really don't have previous DeFi experience?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
You got to make it easy. You got to make it simple. And as we were talking through here for the last, I think originally we were hoping to get this thing out back in January, right?
Mm-hmm.
And IT projects are IT projects.
It's not a tech project without delays.
Right. And things evolve. So, just rebuilding to where we thought we were going to be in January certainly was an option. Here we are in September of 2021. And a lot of things have changed since then. Matic did this huge push, showed that capability of a second layer network to Ethereum. But if you've ever had to bridge back from Matic to ETH, you're waiting 8 hours to make a move, right? And Avalanche just seems like they are, like we said before, right? They're taking the path now that we want to be on. And so as we now then flip that and look at it from the user perspective, right? And we've heard from all these different people, it's too much. I don't understand. What should I be looking at, right? What I do think that some of the BlockFis have done is kind of keep things simple, right? You ACH some money in, you get your dollars in. They might automatically convert it to Gemini or USDC or whatever, but it's easy. And easy and simple seems to be what that next level user that we're trying to attract wants.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no surprise there, right? Nobody wants to drop $200,000 or $300,000 into something they don't understand.
Well, no, not only that, you guys are working with Bridge Mutual, right? Well, actually, before we get to that, what's going on under the hood, though? I mean, this looks like he's saying basically this is an execution play, the highest order, and we're just going to do it. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're just going to do it better. But is there any sort of technical hurdles you have to overcome, or are you doing are you innovating behind the scenes to make that happen?
So Avalanche is interesting because it is EVM compatible. So going, from Ethereum to Avalanche is pretty easy on the tech side. But then, you actually get into the infrastructure of Avalanche and how it's doing the things that it's doing. And that's where you start to see the differences. So there's some minor considerations that have to be made in the code, such as like Avalanche. If there's no transactions in a certain amount of time, it won't produce any blocks. However, if there's a lot of transactions in a shorter period of time, there will be a lot of blocks. Whereas Ethereum, you can kind of have a consistent 15-second block time. So there's these minute little differences that you have to think about kind of on the back end. But generally, like, this is what audits are for. This is why you have other people come look at your code. Avalanche, this is one of the things, like Mason said, go where the puck is skating. Ethereum, there's already all of these tools out there. You can track your portfolio pretty well from your phone even. But Avalanche, there's still somebody needs to build the tooling there. Like those tools just aren't out there. So this is where we see us, really fitting in is, being one of those projects that builds on Avalanche, builds on these other chains, and builds the tools that people need to be able to onboard to these products successfully.
Right. I have a question. Were you part of you were in Harvest at some point, right?
Yeah, I did do some work for Harvest. Yeah, this was a nice little effort I did earlier this year. But did some design for them to bring their project over to Binance Smart Chain.
And with BMI, Bridge Mutual, what's the relationship? What's the rationale?
Yeah. So Mike is one of our advisors. He got kind of in early as we were doing our discussions with O and reaching out to different people as who we thought was going to be effective. And in the same vein of like an end user perspective, right? They're like, well, is it FDIC insured? Well, we know that's not really possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are different financial instruments than you go down to the corner and deposit money in your bank, but people still want stuff to be insured, right? So as we looked at kind of like those big three pillars of like the, simplicity, the next one is security. And security is in two ways. Noah talked about audits, but from an end user perspective, an audit is a footnote somewhere that says, hey, we got Halborn to stamp the code, but what does that mean to you, Dave, as an end user, right? You're like, well, does that mean my money's backed up?
Yeah.
And so Bridge was a very interesting product as they've come out so that we can start to look at how do you either allow for insurance or even allow for self-insurance so that if something does go wrong, that there's a backstop for it. And seeing them actually have to go through and pay out is like one of those double negatives. Somebody got breached, but at the same time, people recovered their money because it was actually insured by Bridge.
Right. So you guys have a tokenized yield index, right? The algo is saying, listen, we're going to making solid returns, 18, 20%. This is an insured product. You guys have some pretty pedigreed investors. I know Ava Labs came on board, among others. So is this sort of your way of kind of like, let's round out this product offering to make it as user-friendly and as kind of consumer-friendly as possible?
Yeah.
Is that?
We want to do everything a little bit better, right? I mean,
definitely, yeah. I mean, that's the goal is like start with functionality and then get into usability. Financial products have this way of being able to lie with you by telling you the right answers. Just the way that information is displayed to you can be misleading. So by going with known names, people that have connections and like real users of these products, people with experience, have them be able to input on our product and our protocol. What we can do here is really build something that's new and is able to grab the attention of, just your ordinary person.
And back to the token, governance has become such a declaration by so many projects. I mean, particularly when Yiffy came in and said, we are governance, that's what we do. You control everything. And I have a kind of a quip saying, I think you should leave people something to govern. What is the true governance functionality within the O Finance token? Like, what are they governing?
You got to look at it a little bit from both ways, right? I mean, got to be sensitive to regulations and rules, right? And so as the team creating the protocol itself, there's a fine line to walk there. We want to put all the pieces in place that we can. Governance protocol helps create a little bit of a firewall so that we can, walk the lines as far as we understand with regulators and with the lawyers, because that's a piece.
Right.
And when you're a public team, you want to, you got to do things all on the up and up.
It also gives the developers a opportunity to really get some input from the community. So, when you want to change something within the protocol, like let's say maybe a month in or a few months in, we think that the 2% that's being paid to the person who's spending the money to use the gas fee and compound for these things is too much or too little, then we could put up a proposal to increase this. And this way we kind of get input from not only like what the team thinks, like we can kind of get our own opinion out there, but we can also hear from what everyone is thinking. And by focusing on a system that really reduces like gas usage, this is, governance is all about like let's reduce the gas usage, so we can really get the right opinions
What
there.
if something happens, they compound, cream curve. Like, what if we want to insert another blue chip into the system, right? How do we do that? I mean,
Should we do that? Yeah.
What if USDC, what if the government steps in and says, hey, we're printing the new digital dollar and you need to, USDC is going to get banned by Coinbase. They're going through their own, pushback right now on lending protocols.
Right.
There's got to be some flexibility there for not to just trust that behind the scenes, that you want a little bit of voting power and how that works, right? And the same thing as if you were a shareholder in a stock, right? Like if the CEO is taking the company sideways, you want to be able to call a quorum and throw somebody out. It's we talk a lot about governance, but there are true reasons for needing governance and needing to have that model. At least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and at least top down, as I'm thinking about it, it's like this integrated polling with people that have real skin in the game.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that does a couple. I mean, that's QA for you guys. That's evolution, and at the same time, it's an actual integration. You guys matter.
Yeah.
And
it
it's
can allow
compliance.
for a takeover, and if that's the way that it needs to run, right? If somebody steps in and says, "Hey, this is like meeting the right new niche," and wants to come in and dominate it, they can actually take ownership of the protocol.
Yeah.
And the second part of the token, again, is this revenue piece. And I'm thinking about it just, it always gets asked and no one really ever considers it. But I think as crypto begins to stabilize a little more, we're starting to see, these big layer ones making big moves. And it's kind of like sooner or later, everyone's going to have this flag in the ground. As a long term, if someone comes in and says, I'm not a trader, I am an investor, I come from traditional finance, I'm a 5-year holder. What do you see kind of the value prop for O is in terms of that? Like why, I could definitely see you guys are going to get a run. You're going to start locking in some value. You're going to generate some returns, but I'm going to go, listen, I want to hold this thing for a couple of years. What do you think's in it for me?
Right. So as the protocol develops and we get more strategies, the idea is to go cross chain, is to move not just on Avalanche and Ethereum, but onto the Binance Smart Chains, the Phantoms, the
Solana.
Yeah, Solana. Yeah, I mean the possibilities are out there, but the idea is to have the token not only be a representation of what the profits are from yielding on one chain are, but from all of them, as a more of a yield aggregation representation of like where is the yield at for the crypto space period. So this is kind of what I guess the goal of our token is in the end of the day, is to be a representation of what you could earn from just putting $1 into blockchain anywhere.
Because right now you've been through it, right? I mean, if you've got to swap chains, that's a process.
It's a nightmare.
I think just to reiterate what Noah's saying, like at a certain point, you don't think about what kind of dollars do I have when you put your money in a bank account. So it would be really nice to be able to just drop your USDC, ETH, BSC, whatever wrapping you've got on it.
Right.
Now, obviously, Avalanche is the chain that we think is, where we potentially bridge from. But as we look at being able to do those kind of bridge seamlessly behind the scenes, you want an end user to be able to just drop, if they've ACH'd their money into Coinbase and then they want to go put it onto O, that's coming on the ETH network, right? If we've got a ramp.network set up on the front end, so where you can just drop your money in maybe from a different network, you don't want to have to think about that. You want to go, oh shit, like I just sent that money to the wrong network and it's gone forever.
Right.
That stuff needs to kind of be that safety catch so that an end user doesn't have to think about it.
By the way, I will plug this. The Avalanche bridge is absolutely seamless, flawless, fast, and affordable.
Yeah.
I mean, man, I actually use that thing and it's outstanding. Product stuff. You guys, do you have any future products in the works that you're thinking about? Like, what's the actual product lineup? You've got the index so far,
Right. So I think right now the idea is that the index kind of is the main piece of the protocol, and that the strategies are where you see the variation. So first we start with USDC. So this was our game plan kind of from day one, is like, let's start with one token and do one token correctly. And then once we have kind of established that we can do this single token correctly, then we can branch out to other stablecoin offerings like DAI, USDT potentially, other things like TUSD even. And then you can start doing a little more interesting things, I'd say, with the strategy. So one of the strategies we've been playing around with is that using the borrowing side of these lending protocols to gain leverage and add a little bit more risk to the strategy in exchange for higher returns. So one of the strategies that's currently in the works is called the leverage lending strategy, which uses Compound and Aave to lend deposits of USDC and then borrow more USDC against it. So you can effectively get 1.5 to 1.75 times your leverage, and this is compounding as time goes on. The interest that you're earning on your deposit is higher than the interest that you're paying on the borrow. So it ends up being a net win for the depositors.
So just a lot of little arbitrage.
Yeah.
So staying within the stablecoin world, right? So that you're not risking those flash crash type.
And Curve, Aave, Compound, why them? I mean, there's lots. I mean, the answer might be kind of obvious. They're just the biggest.
Yeah.
But was there any other rationale? Are you looking at anything else? Are there any other protocols that kind of strike you as special?
Largest, safest.
Yeah. The largest, safest, most well known. I mean, the Compound and Aave teams are pretty well known around the space. They're US based. The Curve team is out of Switzerland, I think, but they've been around for long enough such that I believe that all these protocols are well proven in the DeFi space. Another one that we're looking at is Alpha Homora, Wi-Fi. We like Yearn Finance a lot. I'm
not familiar with Alpha. Tell me.
Alpha Homora. So Alpha Homora offers leverage yield farming. So users, there's a couple different roles in this ecosystem, but the basis is that users can lend stable coins to the protocol, in which users can then borrow at leverage to then make like LP tokens for SushiSwap and earn sushi. So it's a more, I think, cost-effective way to do borrowing in DeFi, and I think there's some opportunities to explore there with automation that I think like to just see how they work. Can
you explain that to a dentist? Right.
That's the beauty, is we don't have to.
Yeah.
Right. You go on and you've got your straight payout, and then you've got a leverage payout. And so from an end user perspective, I don't want to know how the sausage is made. I just want to know what flavor it is.
Right. And how difficult is it from a UI standpoint to put that together?
So I mean, we build the platform first. This is the protocol. So there's a base layer of smart contracts that has to be put in place, and then we can add more to it, or update the existing contracts with just a simple governance push. So the idea is that, let's say some new protocol comes out, we see a potential opportunity, we write a strategy in a couple days, we propose a governance vote, another 48 to 72 hours goes by, and within a week or so, we have this new strategy either added in the index or a new index created to manage the strategy.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. I'm going to ask you an impossible question, or at least one I couldn't answer. Just in terms, philosophically, where do you see crypto in, I don't know, take it out a few years, 3-5 years? Like in terms of DeFi, how you think it's going to evolve? You think it's just going to be this kind of massive exodus from centralized banking onto the blockchain, or how do you see this coming to pass?
I don't think governments are going to quite let that happen.
No.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not going to let it go silently, like into the night, but I really don't see like what all tools they have at their disposal. That's the thing is, I mean, it's set in motion. Yeah,
right?
It's set in motion, and now once it's there, I mean, how do you really stop it? I mean, that's the question that I guess they're trying to answer right now.
How do you get information proven on the internet anymore? There's no Snopes for everything, right? Like, so it's, you probably have a take on this, but I do think, for those of us who remember the late 90s, right? If you knew how to write a website, you had $1 million on paper, right? I remember so many kids in the DC area driving Ferraris because they worked for AOL, or they worked for, dogcrates.com, because somebody knew how to just, write enough HTML to create a website that you had a company. I think that's a little bit of also what we're seeing in crypto, and I think there'll be that breakdown, and then from the breakdown, we'll see who comes back up, right?
Yeah.
Who's Yahoo and who's the new Google? Like,
yeah.
Is ETH Yahoo? Is
Right.
ETH Google? Is ETH something totally different? And how are those pieces power forward, right? And at this point, we're putting some chips on Avalanche because they seem, like I said before, like they've already got the technicals where we think that's going to help them build up for that next gen of after the breakdown.
Yeah, definitely. I see like at the endpoints, kind of the exchanges, that I see more regulation there, more KYC requirements coming, just kind of across the board. We've seen it with, crackdowns on Binance, FTX, things like this. But, I really don't think that the governments are like really going to try and get rid of it. I think crypto in general is a good thing.
I hope
And
so.
encourages innovation. Well,
Think about all the other markets this is going to impact, right? I mean, this stuff gets brought up all the time.
Right.
One I love that's just so easy to wrap your head around is like title insurance for real estate, right?
Right.
You write all that to a blockchain. I don't have to go pay somebody $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 to be like, hey, can you run a search to make sure that nobody else owns the property I'm about to buy?
Yeah, that's the real use of NFTs, right?
Right. But I mean, we're sitting here, Los Angeles County. You can hear a little bit of noise in the background. Everybody's doing constructions and permits, right? But something like that, you can so easily imagine how that goes to the blockchain, right? I mean, title insurance, thinking about real estate. Now let's start to integrate payments right on top of that, right? If someone wants to go look at your assets to prove you can go buy a house, you can start to talk about disrupting the credit industry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff you didn't have a credit score before, 1988? I mean, that's all still relatively new in the scheme of things. And it may be short-lived in the long run for how this stuff all starts to come together. You can prove that you've got your assets on the blockchain. Doesn't seem like there's a better way of proving that than a credit score.
No. I was just, as I was sort of musing on you guys with kind of like this easy UI and the complexity of what goes on in the background, it just, for me, it sort of harkens back to, high definition television.
Yeah.
Suddenly we went from these interlays to these progressive signals, and then you didn't have the content. So you had 720p DVDs, but you had to have a 720 projector. It wasn't native to native. I remember there was HDMI, DVI, S-video, composite and component cables. And then, someone
HD DVD.
Right. And Blu-ray, right? There was
Right.
that Betamax war. I'm that old, so I remember all of it. And then eventually there became convergence, right? People trying to get to watch a YouTube video on your flat screen from your computer was something like I could do, but most people just thought that was like, way too Orwellian to even look at. And now, like Netflix, all this stuff is integrated.
You AirPlay from your MacBook to your TV, and that's
Right.
all just normal.
It's all normal.
And that brings back to the average person doesn't want to have to think about competing standards, crossover cable connections. And so, for the immediate, let's make it as simple as we can. In the longer term, let's start to help bridge all those back ends behind the scenes so that
Right.
the average person they don't have to think about that stuff.
So it's kind of algorithmic returns, no KYC, insured product. Now, in terms of custody, when you say you're non-custodial, there is sort of this debate about, well, I am locking my funds in your smart contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in what respect can you say that's entirely non-custodial? Like I know it's not sitting directly on my leg, it's sitting in your SCs.
Right.
Right.
So this is the good part about smart contracts is that when the funds are on the smart contract, I can say with certainty that I cannot get them. That even though I may have deployed the contract, I may be the holder of the private key of the person who is the owner of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
The code that we actually write prevents any of the developers from taking money out of the protocol. The point is that if you deposit any funds, you should be entitled to those funds plus the interest. And the only protection that the developers have, or only safeguard that the developers have put in on these yield indexes is if is to pause the strategy. So let's say Compound in some crazy event was to get hacked, then we could say, all right, let's go ahead and withdraw all the capital from Compound strategy until further notice. This is the only power that the team at O Finance has, is to say, hey, look, this protocol has been hacked. We need to pause it.
Pause button.
Yes, that doesn't give us access to the funds that were in the protocol. It just allows the users to either withdraw them or allows those funds to be reinvested into the other strategies that are within the yield index.
And then think about it another way too. I mean, right now, if BlockFi gets sued again, can they pause all of your deposits and withdrawals?
Right.
I don't know. Again, for those people who are a little more comfortable in the blockchain world, that's a much simpler exercise. If you've tried to pull any money out right now, it's probably a good thing the way they got security set up, but you got to take a selfie. You got to like show you're you. And for a person who has no competency in that, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You don't want somebody else to be able to pull out your money. But at the same time, right now, you see a different yield on a different platform, and I don't want to wait 2 business days, right? I mean, how do we go from blockchains are near instant transfers to back to, hey, an ACH is 1 to 3 days, so you'll get your crypto in 2 to 3 business days? If that timeline was shrunk back down to reality, but we're seeing the same things take over in the banks did in the crypto world a little bit. Hey, we'll hold your money for a couple extra days and make a little bit of extra yield, but you don't get that money. Isn't that the system we're trying to move away from?
Yeah. No, listen, I've been to the city. I can't go back to the farm.
Yeah. I think, like non-custodial, really what we're trying to get at here with using this term is that you have access to your funds at any point that you want them. You could exit the protocol with all of the funds that you put in there, plus any of the interest that you've earned on it.
And in terms of launching, this thing seems like it's been, user ready for a while. What's next?
Yeah, we've been focused on the strategies a lot, right? Proving out the way that we're going to make money, hearing a lot about it, user feedback. We talked about it earlier. We'd have loved to get the product out earlier. Sometimes you got to time that with the market.
Yeah. And the marketing. I mean, that's really, what we've been focusing on is like, you really only get a launch one time.
That's why you're here,
right?
So if things aren't 100% right, the connections aren't there, we haven't, built the following we want at launch, then, I mean, it's, in our opinion, it's better to wait until all of those pieces are in place before we really, go out and put it in the wild.
Yeah, well, at Avalaunch, I can say this, that we do appreciate the maturity of the project, what it's coming, where your focus has been. I mean, obviously, we're going to hopefully start to ramp up a little bit on the socials because you're only as good as your community. Yep. And we want to start locking some crypto value when this thing goes live.
Yeah.
I appreciate you both for putting up with the jackhammers, the poets, the painters, the pundits, the politicians here in Los Angeles County making background noise. And for you from flying in, definitely appreciate it. So that's the Finance guys. I'm Dave Donnenfeld with Avalaunch, and we look forward to hosting their IDO on our platform and getting that protocol theirs live. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.